I've heard you say several times on tapes that this is a heightened state, our planet is in a heightened state of energy and awareness.
Because of the magnificent contrast, more of you have been aggravated into supreme desire, so there is a stronger asking than we've ever seen in a time-space reality, which means the answering is happening, which is why the current is flowing. In other words, more are asking, and so Source is answering more, so the energy is moving faster, which means being in a state of allowing is more important to personal comfort than it has ever been before. That's why the crevasse between those who have and those who have not is becoming more distinct. The crevasse between those who are well and those who are sick is becoming more distinct. In other words, there's less gray area.
So, is this basically caused by world events or just everything that's in our experience?
The world events are more as a result of the dramatic contrast. In other words, the world events look like they may be the cause of the contrast, but the world events are actually the result of the contrast. World events have always happened. You are not at a time of more heightened world events than ever before. You have always been billions of people banging around with each other, coming to personal desires. The only difference now, as in earlier times that you may even remember in your recorded history, you have so much more conscious awareness of each other through the news media that is controlled by so few that a more singular mindset is offered, which causes a more similar vibration and more at the same time. But it matters not very much because the well-being is so much more dramatic and the individual awareness of personal life is so much more poignant. What we mean by that is, if you were to watch the television, you would think that everybody was talking about a subject because it will go through the airwaves and no matter what station you turn to, they're talking about that thing. But when you go to the grocery store, you don't hear it. When you go to Houston's restaurant, you don't hear it. When you are standing in the elevator, you don't hear it. Even when you come to one of these gatherings, you rarely hear it. In other words, what people are talking about is what they're going to have for dinner and who they're going to eat with and what time they're going to have dinner and who's going to take the kids to soccer and who's going to pay the accounts receivable. In other words, you are much more diverse in your thoughts than is implied by watching the handful of deciders about what world events are.
Has there been another time in our history where the energy has been this high or that we're aware of?
Never. Remember, this is an expanding universe.
Okay.
That's like saying, have we ever lived the future before?
I see. Will it ever dissipate or get less, become less?
The energy will never become less because the wanting will continue to increase and the universe will continue to expand. But the feeling of resistance can get less. It just did within you today. So the resistance factor, the allowing or disallowing factor, is the only needle to watch. It's sort of like the airplane up in the sky, 40,000 feet, 700 miles an hour. You look out the window and all is well. Put that same airplane on the ground at 700 miles an hour. It's quite a ride. Because on the ground there is so much more resistance. And so as you realize that the velocity of your energy is going to continue to increase, and as you deal with your resistance, then your ride will continue to be smooth and delicious. And in the bigger scheme of things, it's much more fun to go fast than slow. It's much more fun to soar with no resistance than to crawl around on the ground.
So in 20 years, and you are still around, which I know you will be, but in 20 years you would still say...
In 20 years, the energy will be moving faster than it is today.
So that's what you'll say.
In 20 years or less, we'll be talking about 15 or 16 seconds of manifestation point rather than 17. The factor to watch is, how am I doing with my resistance?
Okay.
In 20 days, you could be resistant-free. So in 20 years, you could be romping with the most successful of them in terms of all things that matter to you with very little resistance. It is so much fun to direct energy. And we want you to get a sense of the directing of the energy. There's the summoning of the velocity through the intensity of your focus, and then there's the allowing of it to flow through the releasing of your resistance. So the more focused you are in ease, the more joyous your life experience is. This struggle is not what it's cracked up to be. And we are amused at how humans cling to the idea that if it feels bad, it's probably good. And if it feels good, it's probably bad. In other words, that's like saying, if I throw it up, it'll probably stay up, even though you know the law. You know through your experience, you know nothing that ever feels bad ever turns out good. And, well, sometimes you say, well, what about that, Abraham? I'm in a better place now, having lived that. And we say, step 1 served you, didn't it? But it wasn't until you got into step 3 that you allowed what you'd been asking for. And so this age-old quest of, well, which is right? Should I be letting go and letting God, or am I the creator of my own reality? In other words, am I supposed to set goals, or am I supposed to just relax and whatever will be, will be? And we say neither one of those on its own works, just like dancing on one foot is not a very beautiful dance. You're wanting to romp in the contrast and let the desire be born, but then you're wanting to turn your attention to what desire that has been hatched within you, and not spend so much time looking at what is. And that's the thing that trips most up. As you look at what is, you offer a vibration about what is. So you say, oh, I'm not very happy here. But you're activating that vibration, and you say, oh, I wish I could be over there. But your gaze over there is very brief. I wish I could be over there, but I'm not. I'm over here. And let me tell you how long I've been over here. Would you like to hear my story? I've written it down. It's in a book. I read it every day, and I tell it to everyone who will listen. It's so hard to be here. There are monuments about having been here. A new one opening in Washington, D.C. this week as a testimony to how awful it was to be here. Oh, why am I always here? And we say, are you kidding? How can you not be there? It's all you talk about. You talk about being there. You offer a vibration about being here. It reverberates to the boundaries of the universe. You never ever let in what you want because you're so busy talking about what you don't want. You got to talk about what you want. You got to talk about what you want until you feel like you've already got it. You got to feel the joy of where you're going in order to get where you're going. That's how you get rid of resistance, you see. You keep reaching for the path that feels the best. So you forget about what's true, although there are many lovely things that are true that you might want to include in your vibration. And we would certainly encourage you, anything that feels good and is true, give it your undivided attention, you see.
Okay, so up to this moment, the term path of least resistance to me has this negative, wimpy connotation. And what I mean by that is I've heard it used in the past as, oh, he always takes the path of least resistance. He never stands up for himself to, say what he wants, and he lets people run over him and that kind of stuff. So I'm having some resistance
yes.
to this
We can imagine
term. Now, when you say path of less resistance, I'm fine. But this path of least resistance, I can feel this negative.
Well, we understand why the path of least resistance doesn't appeal to you as a race, because you've been convinced that you are here to prove worthiness and that you should not do it the easy way. Mm-hmm. You have been taught against the path of least resistance.
Right.
And yet, everything in the universe functions with the path of least resistance. That's like saying that as law of attraction is summoning to you what you're wanting, we want you to get this sense that you've asked and this summoning is occurring. And so if you would just relax and let it come, it would come. And you say, but no, it must be harder than this. I must suffer more.
Right.
Because there is no gain without pain. And everything that is virtuous and praiseworthy has struggle attached to it. And we say, we don't know where you get this stuff, but we know, as you just said, you've got it. Mm-hmm. And we're offering every trick in our book, and there is an endless supply, to assist you in discovering that the path of least resistance is the way you're wanting to go. Now, I want to talk about what you've highlighted here because it's so important. We didn't say don't focus. We're saying focus. We didn't say don't examine the contrast and decide. We're saying examine the contrast and decide. We're just saying that once you've decided, get out of the way of it and let the universe yield to you what you're asking for. We're not saying be a wimp and don't decide what you want. In fact, we're saying something even greater. We're saying be so deliberate about your thought that you are vigilant in every moment to the way that you feel so that you can guide your thoughts carefully and precisely. We're not saying just lay around and don't think and don't make it happen. We're saying be very active, be very aware, let the guidance that is within you let you know what you're doing in every moment and constantly guide your thoughts to the path of least resistance. But the difference in the philosophy that we are knowing and what you are expressing back as something that humans are often expressing is humans believe that there is a source of badness that they must be vigilant against. Humans believe, as they look out into the sea of stuff that they don't want, that they can look at the thing that they say yes to and say yes and make it come, and then they can look at the thing that they shout no at and shout no and make it stay away. And we say, and that's because they do not understand law of attraction. And when you understand law of attraction and you understand that the only source is one of well-being, then you can relax into the idea of letting the well-being that is natural to you be. But it doesn't mean that you are not deliberate. It doesn't mean that you are not a director. You're helping us to express with greater clarity something that we've been wanting to express. And that is the battle that we feel within so many of you as you say, well, which is it? Am I the deliberate creator of my experience, or am I supposed to let go and let God? It's the age-old battle.
Yep.
Materialism versus spiritualism. In other words, how does it all fit together? And we say, you are extensions of that which is source, and you would not be here focused in this magnificent environment if your focus were not of huge value. And understanding law of attraction as we do, we know that as you focus, that even if you can't speak it, the desires or preferences that are born from your exposure to the experience have summoning power, and that all that is comes forth in response to your leading edge experience. So you are not only not broken, here to prove some sort of worthiness, you are on the leading edge that is taking all that is into this expanding universe. Your part in all of this is critical to the expansion of this universe. But the universe's expansion is happening whether you consciously allow your alignment to it or not, you see. And that's why we say you cannot help but conjure the new leading edge focal point. You can't help it. The contrast is going to make that happen. It just happens. It's a consequence of this magnificent universe in which we are all focused. But you do have the option of letting yourself go along with it or pinching yourself off. And so, here's the part that we are so excited to express here. While it is nice sometimes to have wanted something a long time ago and almost forgotten about it because it's been so long, and then to be bipping along, happy about some other thing that seems totally unrelated, and have that thing now manifest. Feels like it just dropped in out of the blue. Out of the clear blue sky, you say, I hardly even remembered that I wanted that. And while that can be nice, it isn't nearly as nice as something that you are actively wanting and actively allowing into your experience. So you are always wanting to find this balance. In other words, we think that the optimum creating experience is to feel the contrast, feel the negative emotion of it, not so much that it really takes you into a painful place, but enough that you know that this thought that you are thinking right now is not a helpful thought. We think it is magnificent to set a goal that you know you can't reach and feel the angst of it feeling impossible for a moment until you talk yourself into believing it. Because we know the joy of the journey of talking yourself into believing it. And we know the thrill of watching things start to line up as you come closer and closer to believing it. We love to see that feeling within you as you begin to acknowledge that, hey, this manifestation is the next logical step. We love watching the manifestation flashpoint where just for a moment the impossible has happened. But we also know that if it feels too impossible, it can't happen. So we think that the thing that you are really grappling with is that quantum leap feeling of how can I get something that I really don't believe to happen so that I can have that sharp, expansive, yippee feeling as opposed to gently bringing myself into the logical conclusion that anything that I want can be. And we know that as human beings, you like the drama of the quantum leap. But in the long run, it is not who you are. It is not what you've come to live.